everybody? Welcome back to the Mediocre Disc Golf Podcast, the average podcast for the average disc golfer. As always, I'm Evan Amstutz. I'm happy you could join me. Some changes are occurring with the podcast, and I'm excited to introduce Kim Hatcher as co-host going forward. Give her a follow at Kim the Great on Instagram. Now let's get back to the interview with Aaron Gossage. This week's episode is brought to you by The Disc Shop. One of the best days for a disc golfer is New Disc Day. With different runs of discs, the best way to get exactly what you want is by seeing what you're buying. The Disc Shop in Middleburg, Florida has the largest selection in-store in Jacksonville. Want the latest from Discmania? The Disc Shop has you covered. Looking for starter kits to introduce your friends? Head on down to the Disc Shop. If you prefer the convenience of online shopping, head over to thediscshop.com for all your disc golf needs. Listeners get 10% off when using the code MDGPOD at checkout online or by mentioning the podcast while in store. Located halfway between Trinity and Ronnie Van Zant, the Disc Shop is the spot. Man, you played pretty well at the DDO course, not necessarily at DDO, but at Worlds last year. How was that whole, we'll leave it pretty generic, how was that whole experience?
It was pretty cool. It's definitely my style of golf, and like Vegas too, I was like, hey, this is my kind of golf. I need to just, have confidence in my game, go out there and know that I can play that well. At DDO, I did play really well, but it was more of like staying conservative, really not taking any big risks in the wind. Versus at Worlds, there wasn't nearly as much wind, so it was about scoring. And again, I just went in with that thought process: don't take any big numbers, try to play very conservative golf, and then just take the birdies when they're there. And since my putting was really on for that whole week, I ended up getting a lot of birdies and getting myself in a good position. So definitely kind of a surreal weekend. Always looking back, it was a fun experience. And yeah, it's cool just like, playing some of my top disc golf at the biggest stage. So
Yeah, you said that you missed the cut last year at LVC, and then a few months later, just more than a few months, but later on that year, you're in a playoff with one of the best to ever do it to win a Worlds. That's a pretty big jump. How is that mentally translated for confidence wise? Has that affected your confidence of like, hell yeah, I can actually hang with these guys? Or have you always just been like, I'm on the tour, I know I can hang with these guys?
yeah, there's a couple different things there. One thing is I'll say I'm definitely like a realist when it comes to things. So I've always kind of had in my head like what I'm capable of, where I'm at with my game, stuff like that. So after winning or after, like having such a good performance at Worlds, I definitely still knew where my game was and stuff. So I wasn't like, oh, I'm top guy, everything like that. It was more of like hey, I know I can compete at this level when I put in the work and everything. And I think more than anything, what I learned from it is what I need to do to play at that level. What practice I need to put in, what is kind of necessary for me to be up with those guys. And I think that's more beneficial than just about anything. The other thing that's really nice about the tour is that you can play a tournament and not play very well, like Las Vegas Challenge last year. I missed the cash, and then next week it's a whole new week. You get to start from scratch. You get to play again, and it's just nice having that like reset, and you can just go into the next tournament, practice up, and be just as confident, if not more confident, in your game for the next weekend. So it always keeps going, and that's what's so nice about it. It's just kind of a grind the whole season.
So what were the takeaways? What things did you say I need to work on X, Y, and Z? What were those things that you've been working on to elevate it?
Yeah, so I had a few things in that tournament. One of the things I noticed is I took off 2 weeks, so I spent the full 2 weeks practicing for Worlds, and that made a big difference. I did the same thing at GMC, and I definitely had a bit of extra confidence going into the tournament where I was like, hey, having that extra week to really grind everything out made a big difference. Again, the putting, every day I was just out there putting, finding that groove, to the point where I just knew that when I stepped up to my putts, I knew what it felt like. My body knew exactly what to do coming out of my hand. And then the last thing was in that actual practice, I found that, especially at DDO, a lot of the tee shots were very simple shots that just kind of put you in the middle of the fairway. And so after a week of practicing, every hole in the course, I started just going out and walking to where my tee shot would land. And then I'd practice like 10, 15 up shots from there. Or I'd go to some of the par threes where I need to execute a very specific shot. And I would, throw my 5 shots, go get my discs, walk back to the tee pad, throw them again. And so they're very specific things where I was like, hey, this is a shot I need to practice because I'm not totally confident in it. And by the time the tournament rolled around, it was like I was confident in every shot on the entire course because I had practiced all the tough ones harder, all the harder ones like longer, and then all the easy ones I knew what I was comfortable doing, and that ended up saving my arm as well. A lot of times I'll spend too much time throwing these big tee shots, and I don't need to practice those. Those are pretty routine, simple, and it's more of those complicated, those shorter shots that are a lot more important.
Are you taking that same strategy into this year with
Yeah,
drills and stuff?
definitely. I'm going to try to keep that going. I also wrote down in a spreadsheet kind of what my thoughts were on each of the holes. I think really getting that game plan out, before the tournament starts is really beneficial. That way I can, visualize, when I'm at the Airbnb at the end of the night, getting ready for the round. It's a little tougher on like Vista or Fountain Hills, just because it's mainly par threes. So it's like you almost have to practice every hole
Hmm.
because it's just like you either execute it or you don't. Versus on a lot of those par fours, it's like, hey, this tee shot's pretty simple. It should get me in this area, and then I'll have to practice this upshot. So definitely a different thought process, but I'm going to be taking it into next year for sure.
So you do you write everything down like as you're going in a caddy book, or are you more of a keep it in your head and maybe write it down when you get home, maybe not?
I've struggled with that a little bit. I don't know exactly what the best way to do is. I am definitely quick paced when I play practice rounds, so it's hard for me to have the time to just sit there, record everything I was thinking. But I got to that point at Worlds where I was like, hey, I'm just going to play a practice round by myself. Going to have plenty of time. And on each shot, I'm going to look at what my notes say, and then I'm going to throw that shot, make any adjustments to it as I see fit based on, how the wind or everything is going. And then I would just like kind of record each of my different shots in a spreadsheet so I could look back on them later, come up with a good game plan, and really get that dialed into my head. The going back and writing it down later is a little trickier just because you don't have the same thoughts that you're having at the moment. So I definitely would recommend if anyone else is trying this, just to like step up to the hole, maybe write down what you're trying to do, what your goal is, and then throw the shot, walk up to your lie, write down how it turned out, write down what was going on, and even if you're not like specifically making a game plan for the hole, at least like recording what your shots were, what your thought process was behind those shots, things like that. Looking back at those notes will give you that like reference of what you're looking for on the hole.
Okay.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, I'm super visual when it comes to stuff like that, so I don't write down a lot, and that's definitely something that I think that every player can improve upon. So
Yeah, for sure. And if anyone has any ideas too, uh, I don't have the best format, so I'd love any ideas anyone has for recording everything.
Yeah, I used to play ball golf competitively. I'm sure listeners are tired of me saying that. But we have like the physical little caddy book that you could flip through the pages, and I'd literally like draw out what I was planning on doing. If it was like a hey, you need a 7 iron to get to this spot, don't even bother trying to go any further. That's what I was putting down just to kind of take out that idea of, well, maybe I'm gonna be Superman this hole and pull a driver and drive the screen. Because I mean, I was, especially as a kid, I'd be like, this is the time that I'm gonna pull off this once in a lifetime shot. And so kind of diagramming out, noting where the bad shot, like where that bad miss would be versus the acceptable, and when to kind of bite off more, when's a good, hey, I need 2 strokes on the field here, let's go for it, versus not. That's how I used to do it. I don't do it now. except for like one or two tournaments. And funny enough, those are two tournaments I played really well in. So maybe I should start doing that again. But it's interesting to hear how different people approach it. I think Macbeth has said at one point that he doesn't write anything down, as far as like he's also been on tour for so long he can probably play all those courses with his eyes closed. So how do you feel about some listener questions?
Some of the questions, like some questions from fans and stuff.
Yeah, you ready for some
Yeah, you want to
listener
add some?
questions?
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm happy to do that.
So what kind of routine did you develop to stay consistent on tour? We've talked to a couple of people and they're like, yeah, I just eat hot dogs and carry on.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit working on the routine. I definitely need to get that dialed in a little bit better. But I don't know, just having especially like there's so many different levels of that too. So my putting routine is pretty standard. I do about the same thing every time on my putting routine. My throwing is a little bit different, and I find that when I go through the full routine, even the practice, it makes a big difference. Really like visualizing what the shot's going to look like and finding my release point, and really just like focusing on that release point when I'm actually throwing the shot. And then as a just like a routine as a whole, I don't, yeah, I'm trying to make my life a little bit more consistent, doing Airbnbs and stuff, so I can actually get a routine going, eat, the same breakfast, stuff like that each day to get that going. But I think the warm up routine is really important. Finding something to really get your body loose, go to the field, throw some shots, do some things like that. And if you can keep all of that consistent, it will really help your game. Add that confidence of just knowing that you're fully warmed up, you're fully ready to go. And yeah, that routine just basically provides that consistency that just tells your brain that you know what you're doing. You've done it a ton of times, and you know you're you're confident in what you're going to do from here on out.
Are you traveling with anybody this year, or are you solo, or?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing a little bit differently than last year. I'm still traveling by myself. I've got my same van, so I've got I can go off and do my own thing whenever I want to. But I'm staying with Ezra and Brody in some Airbnbs, which I think will be a really nice improvement, quality of life. We'll have a kitchen, consistency there. Like I was saying, I'm trying to get a routine going. So I think that all that's very important. That
Cool.
What do you do to pass the time traveling by yourself?
you mean just while I'm driving,
Driving.
or like?
I'm sure you're not disc golfing all the time. You have
Yes, I've got a few things. I bring my mountain bike with me wherever I go. It's
Oh,
fun
cool.
checking out different mountain bike trails. Big time into that, so that's a lot of fun. And then I don't know. Everyone's been playing pickleball lately. That's kind of like the disc golfer game. So we do that in a lot of the free time. It's a good nighttime activity when you can't play disc golf. So that's pretty cool. And then when I drive, I usually listen to music, but I've had some podcasts recommended to me recently that I'll probably start listening to. And then a lot of times I listen to books on tape. So those are my big things to try to pass the time while I'm driving, which is pretty well.
Have you gotten any good at pickleball? Are you like Zach's level where you're entering tournaments and stuff?
So I haven't entered any tournaments. I'm a tennis player. I played for a long time. So
Yeah.
when everyone said they're playing pickleball, I was like, it's kind of lame. And then I started playing it and getting pretty good at it. And it's interesting. It's fun, especially because we get to compete with the same guys. You're playing, Chris, Paul, Drew, AB, all these same guys we're playing. And it's just a different sport. So we can get that competitive edge out of us, that we always have. And it's still like fun and relaxed because it's pickleball, so none of us are like,
It's not that
it's
serious.
not what we
Yeah.
do for a living. Yeah, it's not nearly as serious. So I'm pretty good at it, but I don't have any like training. I haven't played any tournaments, anything like that. It's just kind of for fun.
Cool. What else we got?
So speaking of tennis, what mechanic from tennis do you think is translated the best to disc golf?
So there's a lot of things. I would say just overall, any athlete. I started out playing baseball, and for a long time, I just put all my effort into baseball. And then eventually I was like, man, I don't like baseball and I don't want to play this game. And I'm sad I wasted all this time of my life playing baseball. And then when I got older, I was like, you know what? All that time I put into baseball is important in every other sport you play. Just the hip rotation, the weight transfer, all those things are important in tennis, in the disc golf, everything else there is. And it's just like, it's so much easier to pick up those sports when you have those things ingrained in you to begin with. Overall, I think the tennis is the best sport that correlates to disc golf because the motions are almost the exact same. The backhand is almost the exact same motion, like arm motion as well as hip transfer as a disc golf backhand, and the forehand's almost the same way on the forehand side. So both ways, it's just very similar motions. It's got similar concepts of creating that lag, getting your whole like hip movements going first and letting your arm kind of like lag behind. Very important in tennis, relaxing. So overall, I think that it correlates better than any sports I've seen. But every sport is important. It gives you that, I don't know, that inherent like, I don't know, feel of how that weight transfer to get that motion going.
Okay. That makes sense. It's always fun hearing everyone's different sports and how they translate to disc golf because everyone's got a different thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've been instructed to read this exactly.
Oh gosh.
My wife wants to know, how did you do in your first tournament? Did you shoot plus 25 in MA4? You have to ask it exactly like that. So my wife, for context, my wife
Okay.
played her first tournament this weekend and she was in FA4 and she shot plus 25, kind of happy with it, but a little confidence shatter, but it was her first tournament. So she wanted to hear from a pro,
Yeah,
not just
definitely.
me who doesn't know who he's talking about.
I'm probably not one of the best people to ask this question to because I can't even remember the first tournament I played. It was
Mhm.
when I was like 10 years old or something like that. But I have played um, like numerous rounds rated in the 700s, maybe even 600s. So you do not need to worry about going into a tournament and, playing worse than you think you could have. I have played, I don't know, worse disc golf than just about anybody in the world, and you just get better, and that's the beauty of the sport is watching the improvement. That was my favorite thing about when I started out in the game, and like watching beginners in general is just you can see the improvement like almost every day. Just the getting your weight transfer, getting your angles dialed, all those things just take time and practice, and it's so much fun to watch and do when you're just starting out because the improvement is dramatic.
Mhm.
So yeah, don't get discouraged about anything like that. I played juniors like 12 and under for a while, and then I played recreational, intermediate, advanced, everything, and I played some great rounds, and I played some pretty mediocre rounds. So definitely, it's a sport for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have anything that stands out in your mind? I'm kind of going through this reviewing for a tournament that I played last year and I'm going to be playing in a couple of weeks where you're like, oh, holy crap, that shot sounded impossible last year when I played it. And now I'm thinking about it and I could probably pull that off. Does that happen a lot on tour or?
Yeah, it's interesting. I noticed that a lot from my first year on tour to my second year on tour. And it's less of like, oh, I can actually pull that shot off now, as much as it is like why was I throwing that shot last year? That shot is not the right shot. This is
Mhm.
the shot I should be throwing. It's so much easier. It's so much more doable. And that's just kind of the experience coming out where I'm like, hey, I actually understand that this is a better shot than that. So I don't know. It's all a progression too. So just even from one year to the next with me who have been playing for 15 years, something like that. Still, I'm like every year I'm like my game is different than the previous year. And I don't know. Here's one example, I guess, of what you're talking about. When I was a kid, the hole 15 out in Palisade was one of the hardest holes in the entire world for me. All I threw were forehands, and I couldn't ever get in bounds. And like right now, it's just a routine like backhand hyzer. So it's like it's just like this night and day difference of like how I would play the hole as a kid versus how I'm playing the hole now. But like I said, I'm not the best person because I have this whole spectrum of me playing the sport
Hmm.
from when I was a kid and didn't throw a backhand to where I am now.
How
So
much of learning lines as you're traveling around playing all these courses comes from like watching other people play who have a bunch of experience? Do you run into a lot of, well, I wouldn't have even thought of that?
I definitely do run into that. It's fun. I like to switch up my practice rounds. A lot of people play with the same people, and I am definitely a fan of playing by myself, playing with my, friends that I normally do, and then just hopping on some cards with some other players. I played a couple with Ricky where I'm like, hey, I'm really interested to see how he attacks this course because I know he's going to play it well. And he lays up a lot of holes where I'm like, okay, I see why, you're shooting really good scores here, and I'm taking double bogeys on these holes. This is a hole that's, it's tough. And he's like, I've decided I'm laying it up, taking my par. And I respect that. And it's fun watching some of the top level players, do those shots. I will say it does work the other way as well. I've had a few times where I see someone throwing a shot and they're like, oh, yeah, this is definitely the shot. And then that's not my game. And I
Mhm.
have to really make the decision for what is best for me, myself. And I definitely have a different game than a lot of other players. So it's important for me to see all those different lines, but then actually make the decision for what's the best shot for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely kind of cool to watch other people throw it, but like you're saying, you got to play within yourself, right? So like some
Yeah.
of those guys that throw different lines or that are more comfortable with a line that maybe you're not, then yeah, for sure, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last one. My buddy actually sent you a video to review his form a couple weeks ago. Is that something that you do normally? And if so, like what are you looking for as far as camera angles, or is there like a pet peeve someone sends you a video, you're like, God, stop doing that?
So I'm not by any means an expert on coaching. Everything I've learned is like self-taught. It's just trial and error, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, and that's how I've gotten to where I am. So I don't have any really solid coaching experience. I've done a couple clinics, and a lot of people reach out to me sometimes and ask me about their form, and usually I'll tell them that same thing where I'm like, I'm no expert, but if you want to send me a video, I can see if I can help you out with anything. And a couple people I've had to just tell, hey, I don't know what's going on here. Sorry.
Back to the drawing board. Just give up, bro.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck. Maybe ask someone else that knows a little better than I do. But a lot of people, especially amateur and below level players, there are a few like mistakes that they're making in their form that stand out quite a bit. So even though I don't know everything that's going wrong with them, I can almost always give them some pointers for just try to like explain to them what the issue is. This is what's happening versus this is. I usually send them a video and show them what the correction will be and just be like, hey, it's a small difference from here to here, but this will help your form out quite a bit. And sometimes I'll try to give some like exercises, some practice routine, stuff like that to work on those things. But yeah, I it happens every now and then that someone sends me a video like that. I don't really charge for it because I'm not sure if I'm giving them good advice or anything like that. But I'm just trying to help people out. So yeah, I just had some people reach out and tell them kind of what I see and hope it helps them out. I don't even know if it does.
Awesome.
It's cool, man.
We appreciate you having taking the time to join us. Wanted to give you the opportunity to plug whatever you got going on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I guess I'll just mention that later today, March 1st is coming out with the Discraft websites. We're having all our merchandise come out. It's a new thing Discraft's doing. So go on there if you want to get any Goose merchandise. We got a bunch of different things on there. So yeah, check it out. Check out all the other players as well. And then we should have some tour series stuff coming out shortly after that. So those are the big things in my world. And go ahead and follow me on Instagram. It'd be great. Aaron Gossage Disc Golf. So sweet. Thanks for having me on here, guys. I really appreciate talking to you about all this stuff and have the opportunity. So
Great.
Cool, yeah.
Thank you for
Thanks for
joining
jumping
us.
on, man. Really appreciate it.
yeah, no problem.
This week's episode is also brought to you by Spikeheiser Dies. Based out of Macon, Georgia, Brandon is making awesome disc creations. From 6-claw zones to K1 Rico X's, Spikeheiser Dies has it all. He will even do custom dies. Give Brandon a follow on Instagram at shdies_DG and keep an eye out for our April giveaway featuring one of his dies. Spikeheiser Dies, excellence by design.
Man, that was awesome. It's cool to hear different insights for somebody who's kind of come up and hasn't just jumped in at like the top level, who's kind of gone through the whole journey of a disc golfer, if you will, that start from the bottom, now we're here type of thing. That's super cool.
Yeah, it was interesting getting his perspective and all the things that he's picked up on tour, as well as just through his life playing disc golf. He's played disc golf for such a long time, and to still be learning stuff and adjusting his game really speaks to how, I guess, cerebral the sport is, for lack of a better term, and how you can always be learning something.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is, like, to kind of that there's always something else to reach for. You know what I mean? Like, there's always, different things that you're improving and learning on. It's totally cool.
Yeah, I mean, the guy went to a playoff for a world title, and he still came away like, all right, I've got to improve this. I got to improve this. I got to improve this. Like, AMs take notes. Pros take notes. That's how you get better, is you're always challenging yourself. You're always trying to learn something new, and maybe literally take notes. That's still up for debate.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought process. I've never done that before, and I don't know if I will, but it's definitely something that that you can kind of get some takeaways. And
yeah. Well, that wraps it up for today. You can find Aaron on Instagram at Aaron_Gossage Disc Golf, Dan at D Hesser, and me at Evan Amstutz DG. Remember to follow the pod on Instagram at Mediocre Disc Golf Pod and on Twitter at Mediocre DG Pod. If you'd like to support us, buy one of our shirts on mythicdiscgolf.com and listen to us every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you enjoyed the show, leave us 5 stars in a review, and if you didn't, still give us 5 stars and tell us why. We know we aren't perfect because we are mediocre. Have a good night.